Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Break the Rules. I'm Lev Polyakov, and we are here today with Adam Green, finally back on BTR, along with Gnostic Informant, great friend of the show. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We got a lot to cover. We're going to be talking about Jeffrey Epstein and all of this satanic, demonic stuff that's been attributed to him, which I know, in my opinion, I think it's been muddying the water of things that could be talked about, both in terms of, I'm not just going to single out Russia here. We could talk about Israel too. I don't care. Everything is fine. But I do want to get to the meat of what's been happening with yourself, Adam. And by the way, you recently wrote a book, The Jesus Deception. So be sure to get that. But I want to find out what's been going on in your world right now when it comes to how your audience has reacted to you departing away from, I think, where a lot of people's minds are at who follow content, that's not that friendly towards the Hebrew people. So please let us know exactly what's been going on there. And and then we could go from there as far as who you see them being associated with, these particular people that have been talking about these demonic influences in relation to Epstein. And we're just going to cover as many bases as possible. And by the way, if you guys have any messages you want to send out in terms of super chats, as far as anything you think that we're not covering, that we're censoring, I want to cover everything. So be sure to let us know. And of course, make sure to smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, click the bell. All that is very important. So anyway, let's start with Adam. Tell us what's been going on with the audience right now.
Well, it's more of the usual. A lot of what I do is point out like a lot of the bad arguments and disinfo. Disinfo just flourishes on the internet. There's so many grifters, and I call them conspiratainment grifters. So it's like their entertainment is just new conspiracies. There's a new conspiracy du jour, and lots of them are religiously based. So right now, with the release of the Epstein files, the emails, everybody, all the big influencers like Alex Jones and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and all of the MAGA sphere pundits are all promoting the idea that Epstein worshipped the god Baal. And they're claiming that he had a bank account named Baal. And in one of the files, it says BAAL name Wachovia Bank. And then 2 lines down, it says bank account name, and then it was like a Clear Lake LLC or something. So they're all lying, and now it's just like everybody's pretending like it's just a fact. Like Pizzagate was right, and Satanists run the world, and they worship the devil. Luciferians run the world. Epstein worshiped Baal. He had a Baal bank account. They're sacrificing babies to Moloch at Bohemian Grove, like Alex Jones says. And now the last few days, even more so, the interdimensional alien demons narrative is really exploded because of an interview that Obama did where he hinted at aliens being real. And then there was a talk about Trump having a speech about aliens. Now he's claiming that Trump is claiming that Obama released confidential information and he's in trouble for that. So another Congresswoman, Paulina Luna, is on Fox News.
Anna Paulina Luna. She's kind of hot.
Yeah. She's one of the prettiest in Congress. Her and AOC. But basically, what I see happening is, like we've seen since October 7th also, it's like the masses, the mobs, the peasants, as Richard Spencer has been saying and Neenmore Amalek been saying recently, they're like whipped up into a frenzy where it's like low IQ, medieval, peasant, blood libel, satanic panic, hysteria. And they're whipped up and they got their pitchforks and their witch hunts, and so much of this, and it can't be disputed, people try to cover this up and sweep, but so much of this is being pushed through all of like the suspected Russian networks. RT pushes it all the time. Putin's been doing this messaging. Russia's been doing this messaging like they're at war with Satanism. There's been headlines recycled forever. Putin banned Satanism. Or they'll say, they're always, the narrative of Dugin, Putin, RT, a lot of the pro-Russia sphere online, is that the evil satanic West, that the Western civilization, Europe and America, is demonic, is antichrist, is satanic, and that it like deserves God's wrath, basically.
Yeah, and as far as the Russia connection goes here, that's definitely something that I want to get into later on in a little bit more detail. There is a screenshot that I did want to share with you guys. There was a conference in Russia that Alex Jones and company attended, so you could probably see some of the key players here. It was Russia 2050, Image of the Future. So who do we got over here? We got our boy Sergei Lavrov, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. We got Elon Musk's daddy, who I don't think they're in good relations with. George Galloway.
How many of these people are in the files?
A bit.
Quite
I mean, we got
I'm not even. I didn't
Alex
even
Jones, of course, looking like a groundhog over here.
Old photo, yeah.
How the hell does that guy, man? You could never mind. He's bought.
Yeah.
He's totally
and
that's Jay Dyer's boy. No, that's Jay Dyer's hero. That's Jay Dyer's boss.
Yeah, a couple of more Russian people
I think
here.
He got totally liquidated.
Yeah. Oh, did you see at the bottom there? You missed also Blumenthal.
Oh, how could I miss Blumenthal? Okay, we cannot miss Blumenthal.
Oh wait, no, hold on. That's not Blumenthal.
No, I'm pretty sure Blumenthal was in here.
Mistake.
You know what? I think he was in here. I'm going to try to find him because there is an archive.org link that I was sent to an older version of this. So as we
go back up to the top, what's the 10 reasons of this thing? What are they saying?
Oh, here we go. This is exactly okay.
Fighting
so fighting for souls
and minds, ideology of sovereign Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great powers concert, Russian foreign policy, wars of the future, Russian space, special operation, new migration, organization, technology development, spatial development, digital sovereignty. What? So patriot education? So why are all these Americans going there?
Well, I think that somebody like Adam could answer that question as well.
I'm not one of these people who thinks we need to be eternally at war with Russia, but like, I don't know.
No, Russia's been acting as the Jamal of the world as far as just being this thug gangster that goes around and, tries to gain as much as it can until it gets its nose punched in.
To be fair, though, and look, I'm for the West. I'm a team player. Like, I love the West. But are we not the same?
No, not at all. I would completely... No, not at all. Here's
so?
an example. Here's an example. So... just in terms of the internal politics right now, right? So we have this comedian in Russia who was making fun of like some, crippled guy in the skateboard. The joke may have been in bad taste, whatever. The Belarusian police, when he went to Belarus, because they're associated with the Russian police, they arrested him. They broke his back. They beat the guy up, and he's now sitting in jail for 6 years. Now, you could say that in terms of the... internal politics, but what about the external? As far as the kind of countries that America's gotten in, let's be fair, America hasn't really gone into like first world or second world, pluralistic democracy type, civilization
we use the
countries.
CIA for that stuff. We
get the CIA into the third world. Here's my main point. Ukraine has been going into the West. It's been attempting to do that for a very long time now. And it doesn't mean that it's going to have these, trans story hours or whatever. But it has been looking into being more of a civilized place, much like Poland. Like back in the day, Poland was a shithole after it was part of the USSR. And then slowly but surely, Poland started weaning itself off of that kind of influence, much like Ukraine's been doing. So as far as how Russia reacted to that, as far as the argument that, well, the West was bullying Russia in the beginning and they should have been kinder to Russia, Russia was already massacring Chechens in the mid-90s. And after that, Russia in around 2008 went into southern Ossetia in Georgia and started a lot of things there. And, it's the same strategy where you have people who, claim to be, persecuted by, I'm sure there were some disagreements, persecuted by the locals as far as South Ossetia and Georgia. And that's used as a pretext to bring in Russian troops in there and declare this place to be like sovereign Russia territory now, handing out Russian passports. So that's been the game plan of Russia for the past decades now.
You ever seen Charlie Wilson's War, the movie with Tom Hanks? You have? I mean, that was a true story about us arming the Afghans to fight against the Russians. And then those Afghans turned around and fought us after the
Not
whole,
great, but here I'll give you an even better example, and this one relates to Israel. No, this one relates to Israel. This is interesting, Adam. I wonder if you know this. Do you know Ari Ben Menash? No.
What about him?
But have you heard of him? Have you heard of this guy?
I don't. Not. It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, so Ari Ben Menash, he's a former Israeli spook. He worked for not the Mossad, he worked for like IDF intelligence. And he wrote a book called Prophets of War. He also wrote another book about Robert Maxwell, you know, the progenitor, one could say, of...
He's the one that says that they're blackmailing Trump with Epstein, right?
Sure.
I think I seen a clip of him. That's
I believe so, yeah. But here's the thing that he was talking about. Back during the 80s, Israel was being given weapons from the United States in order to sell those weapons to Iran. And this is like post-revolution Iran. And Israel and the United States agreed that we're going to milk these Iranians for as much as possible. It's going to be a king's ransom. But the reason why they sold the weapons to Iran was so that Iran could fight against Iraq, which was being funded by both the Americans and the Soviets at the time. This is like, you know, like mid-80s. And you could say, oh, that's so horrible, these war pigs, how dare they? But then let's think about this a little bit more, right? If, for example, Iran were to have fallen by an Iraq that would have been empowered by the Soviet Union at the time, then guess what? The Soviet Union's got all this oil now, it's got all this control, and it becomes like a pretty strong superpower in competition with the United States. And that's not going to be good for the future of Western civilization, as far as I'm concerned, if I were to be one of those think tank people back then. So I'm giving the devil his due in saying that all these things related to geopolitics, like a lot of these libertarians like Dave Smith and, you know, people in the gray zone, people who get paid by Russia, they just want to say we're this isolationist bunch of, freedom-loving moralists. We're not going to do anything at all related to any geopolitical chess matches. We're just going to sit everything out. But then the problem is that, well, what happens after you set everything out? Is the world just going to freeze? Or are there going to be other countries like Russia, like China, that end up taking advantage of certain gaps of power and end up creeping in there? So I don't know. You guys could disagree, but here's what you guys think.
I get it. I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, it's just the nature of all history is that is plays out that way.
Yeah.
You know.
But I don't know, Adam, any thoughts on that particular thing?
No, but I kind of wanted to bring it back to where I was at before that. So they're also doing the other half of that is all of this push that demons are the threat and that Satanists run the world and that they're eating babies. That's the other big conspiracy going around that they're all spreading, is that they're in the emails of Epstein, he's eating beef jerky and talking about beef jerky recipes and other things. Like apparently he was eating a lot of beef jerky. High protein keto diet or something, you know. So they're all saying that's proof, that's hidden code that he was eating babies. And the thing is it's almost 100% Christians and Muslims that push this, because when they make up and fabricate hidden Satanists hiding under every rock, or when there's like when they try to prove that there's a supernatural threat of demons and Satanists and magic and sorcery and witches, then it's Jesus becomes the solution. If the elites are worshiping Baal, then that means we need to be worshiping Yahweh as the good guy. So this is the Judeo paradigm that they got everybody stuck in. But you know what's so they're just straight up lying. The Baal bank account thing is so easily debunkable. Even Nick Fuentes and Ian Carroll, and there was an article debunking it and showing the proof and the receipts on Yahoo News even. But still, Alex Jones and Joe Rogan, they're all still pushing this. Tim Dillon, tons of big influencers are all doing this.
And did I tell you, by the way, about Tim Dillon in particular? He met the Red Scare girls back in the day. And I think ever since that point, and the Red Scare girls, I personally think that they're very much a part of this whole Russia thing as well. They're friends with the guy who used to run Russian Esquire magazine, who is like Putin's propaganda guy. I can't recall his name right now, But what's interesting to me is that you have this configuration, and I mentioned this before on the show, of Tim Dillon together with Lex Friedman at dinner with Ben Avery and Joe Rogan. And this is something that Ben Avery was talking to me about. He told this to me in public, that Lex Friedman could not stop complimenting Vladimir Putin in private to Joe Rogan. And next thing you know, Joe Rogan's quoting some Russian TV broadcast. I don't remember exactly about what. I think it has to do with like how traditionalist Russia is, or maybe like how the Ukrainian government is like full of Nazis, or, you know, one of these very basic Russian propagandistic points. But somebody like Joe Rogan, like I think Mike David from Red Bar is right. He's probably the most manipulated man in history.
I watch a lot of those YouTube videos about Joe Rogan. A lot of critics on YouTube.
Yeah, he has a lot of haters. Listen,
yeah, there was one really good documentary. What the Red Scare girls? I heard something. They might have something to do with Peter Thiel as well. That's something.
Oh
something
yeah.
Else I heard.
Oh, we're gonna get into Peter Thiel. Yeah.
Epstein invested
that
in
podcast.
Palantir.
No one listens to that fucking podcast. Are you serious? Have you ever
No,
tried?
a lot of people apparently do. A lot of hip, you know,
who?
Like the Dime Square crowd.
I've never met a single person who's like, I can't wait for the next Red Scare episode. I mean, have you tried to listen? I've clicked on one before. It's like the most boring shit I've ever heard in my.
I never heard of him until Fuentes was on.
Holy crap, that was boring.
Anyways, I remember the first one.
I was trying to say though, with the beef jerky stuff and all the weird, the coded language, like I'm sympathetic to people who think these are very elite people who live in a different world, who have doing weird shit, having weird parties, underage girls involved, maybe even compromising people, maybe even contacting government agencies and giving information. I'm fine with all that. However, Adam's right. A lot of people are pushing the evidence that we have to way higher levels than, like, they're not taking a very evidence-based approach when they're looking at this. They're going, this means this, so therefore this is this, and then this, therefore now that I've established this, now this is true. Now that I've established this, now this is, and you have to go through all these leaps. Like, good methodology when you're studying history or anything is you can make an argument based on the data, and you can make a leap. You can make one argument based on the data. Once you make an argument based on your argument, then you're already going way off the mark. You're in like speculation land. And like another thing that bothers me about all this is like the craziest thing. This is why I even wanted to come on here, because I'm fine with people saying like, oh my God, what's going on? This is crazy. Like, we should be talking about this. Okay, I get it. And I also agree with what Adam's saying. But no, you notice how everyone wants to sweep their politicians under the rug and just get the Trump, all the MAGA people who are talking about like there's this one account. There's this account called Illuminati Bot, and he's all about conspiracy theories and all this nonsense about cannibals and the Rothschilds. He never talks about Donald Trump, though. Not once. Not once does he say Donald Trump's in the emails. Wow, this one's really bad. Take a look at this one. Whoa, what's going on with Donald Trump in this email? What about this one? Never. They're completely partisan, so I don't even. It just pisses me off that people.
And I could give
like
another
this.
example, by the way, of with Russia, and I'm not going to mention the podcast because I feel bad about it. But there was a certain podcast that's very popular where they were talking about the Epstein files, and this was at around the height when the whole Russia stuff was coming out in relation to Epstein. All the mainstream press was writing about it. Not once did they mention Russia. I double checked. I did like a whole transcript of their entire conversation. Not once was the word Russia used at all, not even in passing. So to me, that says that there is some kind of a controlling mechanism, like certain people who invest money into these things that don't want certain subjects to be broached, even though these are supposed to be like the pro-free speech, free expression clique. Yet apparently we have things like that. And another thing, by the way, I'm curious what you guys make of something. It's not as much within the demonic realm, but it does have certain people that are, connected to it mimetically. So like the Rothschilds, for example, right? There's this guy who was commenting over here about how Epstein accompanied Jacob Rothschild to the World Jewish Congress and would perform mundane tasks for the Rothschilds, such as buying them furniture. He also mentions being told not to have contact with somebody else, lest he would get in trouble with the inner circle. So all three of those points, I looked them up. I went through the Epstein emails. So what I got was this. So with Jacob Rothschild, Peggy Siegel, who's this Hollywood PR lady. In fact, I found out that some of the people who I know are also like friends of hers, apparently. She throws all these lavish parties and she brings like a lot of celebrities together. So she had this dinner that was sponsored by the World Jewish Congress, and she just wanted like a lot of rich, a lot of powerful people to be there. And as a fleck to Jeffrey Epstein back during that time, she wrote that Jacob Rothschild is also going to be attending. Yet this guy turned it into him accompanying Jacob Rothschild, as in like this one unit here. The second thing with the furniture, that is true. But what was that specifically was between June and July 2015, there was a facilitation of purchases of furniture that Epstein did for this one Rothschild lady. That's it. Like after that, I haven't found any other, connection with him procuring items for the Rothschilds as if he's like some kind of a butler. And the last thing with the inner circle, that has nothing to do with the Rothschilds at all. That was an email that was sent by this physician, Melanie Walker, about Epstein. And the inner circle that she was alluding to here had to do with, I believe, the fact that she was working for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And like those were her inner circle people. So again, like there's elements in what I said that involve all these people, but the way that they're actually, in terms of the context is very different, isn't it?
Well, my understanding is there were quite a few emails with Epstein and Ariana Rothschild, who's the leader of the French-German Rothschild group in I think in France, and Les Wexner, who is the Victoria's Secret billionaire that also was involved with Epstein. He just testified yesterday, and he said Epstein told him that he represented the Rothschilds. It did seem like they had some type of relationship where he was their financial fixer or something like that.
Wait, did he say that in the in his talk? Because I'm representing the Rothschilds, that was in the email in the Epstein files that Epstein sent. From what I understand, that was supposed to mean in the context that he was representing the banking family, much like one would represent Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan or, Goldman Sachs or any of these companies. But that still doesn't mean that he didn't have a relationship with that particular Rothschild lady. He did. I looked at those too. But the interesting thing there was that she was writing this note about how Adolf Hitler was staying in a Rothschild-sponsored poorhouse back in the day. So were a lot of other poor people. But this just seems to be one of those things where, you're a rich Rothschild family. You're going to spread some charity here and there. You're going to sponsor some places for people who are destitute to stay in. And she was actually making the point that, oh my God, like people are probably going to think that means that the Rothschilds supported Hitler's rise to power, because when he was this poor guy, he was staying in like one of their hotels, just like a lot of other poor people were. So I don't know.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that one up. Actually, that's the main one that I remember seeing. Is they were talking about, I think it was like the context was they were saying there was a Harvard class that mentioned Hitler staying at the shelter, I think in the 20s or when he was 20, and that she's like, it's true, the Rothschilds, and she said, and Epstein did fund it, but then she called him ungrateful, and then she called it a pathetic conspiracy theory. And it's funny, though, Jay Dyer picked up on that and said, totally vindicated. Look, they're behind him, right? When it's like literally proving the opposite of that. She calls him ungrateful and says it's a pathetic conspiracy theory.
Well, we're going to get into the Rothschilds, stuff like that as well, like the Mega Group, for instance, in relation to Les Wexner. That, to me, is actually a much more concerning thing, because there you do have people from Israeli intelligence who are working with Peter Thiel, and Les Wexner is involved in this thing, and it's related to 911 emergency technology. And what I don't like about that is that has the potential, like a lot of these big tech projects, to spy on people and then to censor people if they, whatever. Like there's always the potential of this going into, I'd say, Russia-China style direction. But that, to me, isn't really involved with anything having to do with like big Judaism or like the Messianic temple Judaism, like the stuff that you talk about. That seems to be in more of this technocratic direction, which you could say is linked, but like as far as somebody like Epstein, somebody like
he didn't seem very religiously inspired, Epstein.
No, No, I mean that's the other thing, which I want to get into later on with like the Zionism and all that. Like
he was
how
calling us
religious
goyim, but that doesn't necessarily indicate that he
No,
was.
I think they enjoy.
religious.
I think they enjoy the fact that a lot of people who are, let's say, more of the rubes of society think of them as that. It becomes this back and forth relationship, right? Where they see all these people who are having all these theories about them. And I think part of them kind of revels in that. Like, yeah, we're the secret bad guys over here. Like I think it takes two to tango in that sense. But another very interesting thing, because we were mentioning Peter Thiel right now, I have to bring up the Russia connection as far as this KGB or FSB guy, Sergei Polyakov, if you would allow me here, because this does connect back to Peter Thiel.
I've been wondering about Russia connections with Peter Thiel. Yeah, let's hear that.
So here we go.
Too. Russia connections with Bannon also. He was very close.
Oh, yeah. So Sergei Polyakov appears in the Epstein files as the Russian official handling Epstein's access inside Russia. Polyakov has a security service background with training linked to the FSB and later held senior posts in Russia's economic development and foreign investment apparatus, the part of the state that interfaces with foreign entities. In the correspondence, Epstein asks Polyakov to look into a Russian woman he claims is attempting to blackmail powerful businessmen. And Polyakov replies that he will, quote, need a few days to get information. After which he provides Epstein with a profile on her. Shortly after, Epstein drafts a message stating, I felt it necessary to contact some friends in FSB, which shows how Epstein himself understood the channel he was using. The visa trail runs through the same lane. Epstein obtained a Russian visa listing Moscow's Vimpel as the inviting organization, the name of an FSB Special Forces unit, with its Veterans Association serving as the formal front, and Polyakov helped secure the invitation letter used for that visa. In 2018, Polyakov again arranged an invitation for Epstein through the Alliance of Pension Funds. This places Epstein's entry into Russia and his meetings with Russian financial and political figures inside state-linked access channels. And here's the part with Peter Thiel. The same correspondence shows Epstein brokering introductions between Polyakov and Western power brokers, including arranging a 2015 meeting between Polyakov and Peter Thiel. Bam! There we go. There's your Peter Thiel Russia connection.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that one, but yeah, everybody was expecting that was the theory, right? That Epstein was blackmailing everybody with like underage sex, right? That's kind of what the ongoing thesis has been.
Well, that's also a big Russia thing as well. Like Russia used to do that with these
Kompromat,
girls that they called, kompromat. That is a Russian word, but they use these girls who they're called lastichki, which means swallows, as in like the bird swallow.
Or the movie, the Jennifer Lawrence Red Sparrow.
Ah, there we go. I mean, it's sparrow, swallow. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I wouldn't be surprised if other countries are also doing the same thing. Just the only thing that I found so far as like the Robert Maxwell trajectory, that guy, the guy who Epstein is supposed to be the protege of, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Epstein's, girlfriend and close confidant, worked with him. Robert Maxwell, he was born in a place which was sometimes Ukraine, sometimes Romania. It was like this border area. His parents were Jewish. He was Jewish as well. They died in the Holocaust, and he became a part of the Hungarian resistance, I believe, against the Nazis. Then he was recruited by MI6. He became an agent for them. Then he became an agent for Israel and the USSR. And the USSR part is the one that people kind of glaze over, even though a lot of the connections that I was able to find as far as like how do you bridge Robert Maxwell to Epstein, it first starts from bridging Robert Maxwell to his legacy continuing on with his children. And there was this Russian guy who was writing this biography who knew a lot of these people back in the day that knew Robert Maxwell. And he was the one who talks about this particular USSR connection. So if you allow me a moment here, his name is Leonid Suramakov. So he was a Soviet-era scientific economic functionary. And so his memoir, which he published in 2005, has first-hand recollections of interactions with Robert Maxwell. And so what he says over here is that Maxwell was described as having direct high-level access to Soviet leadership, including Gorbachev. Soviet ministers would reportedly treat Maxwell with formal respect. Maxwell's contacts overlap with Soviet scientific and international information agencies. Let's not forget the whole scientific egghead part of Epstein as well here. So over here, this is important. So Sumarokov states that Maxwell's children, especially Ian and Kevin Maxwell, continued dealing with figures such as Russian oligarch Grigory Luchansky after Robert's death. And this suggests a continuity of relationships after the USSR collapsed into the post-Soviet years. Luchansky, described as a powerful business figure with billions in deals, is mentioned in relation to Maxwell's extended network. And the Maxwell family ties to post-Soviet commercial elites were ongoing, according to the memoir. And lastly, Sumarokov quotes the former KGB chairman, Vladimir Khrushchev, who said, "I think the business with Maxwell is not over yet." So that's just like a little bit of a bridge so people don't think that the children of Robert Maxwell were completely out of the loop when it comes to his relation with the Soviets.
The email, though, about the Russian girl blackmailing like some of his friends, I think it was in New York, right? Like that kind of shows, though, that like he's not doing the Russian blackmail, but just like some Russian girl was blackmailing his group of friends, and then he contacted the FSB guy to try to shut it down or something.
Shut it down, right. Exactly. And another person who was in Epstein's life in relation to Russia, well, he had this PR girl. I'll get to her in a moment. But this guy over here, Thorbjørn Jagland, this guy's super important. So this guy was not only the former prime minister of Norway, but he was also the secretary general of the Council of Europe. And this guy was very close to Epstein. So in 2018, Epstein is trying to reopen channels to the Russian state after the death of Vitaly Churkin, who was Russia's longtime ambassador to the UN and the key diplomatic fixer for the Kremlin. And Epstein writes in the email to Jagland, the emails that were released recently, "Churkin was great. He understood Trump after our conversations. I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insight on talking to me," referring to Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister. And Jagland replies that he will meet Lavrov's assistant on Monday. So this shows that it wasn't just like this abstract name drop. And another message, Jagland asks Epstein to keep their contact discreet, writing, "Can you confirm it is the same procedure as last time, that I can stay with you, promise not to make noise or ruin you. I'm coming directly from Moscow, meeting with Putin." Lavrov and Medvedev. So Medvedev, as you guys know, he was like the former Russia president, in between the Putin regimes. Then in 2019, as the Council of Europe votes to restore Russia's voting rights after years of sanction pressure from what they did in Crimea, Terje Rod Larsen, who is a Norwegian diplomat known for his role in the Oslo Accords, who was also corresponding with Jeffrey Epstein, he writes to Epstein, "Thorbjørn managed to get a majority of the Ministers' Council to vote Russia back into the Council of Europe again. Quite an achievement. Russia must be very grateful." So there we go. That is a connection that not only shows their correspondence, but the fact that they are very much interested in bringing Russia back into the Western fold. So there we go. Like that's like say what you want about Israel, but that's like an actual maneuver that geopolitically benefits Russia when it comes to something that Epstein was able to help out with.
Yeah, you don't really see, nobody's denying the Israel connections with Epstein, which there were many, especially with Ehud Barak and other American Jews and stuff. But they are downplaying the Russia connections too, which I find suspicious. Like, why couldn't it be that he was just working with some of both? Like Russia and Israel are have a relationship together as it is, so why would he not be working with both? There were other emails of him talking about, he said Putin wants to meet with him, or he was trying to get a meeting with somebody else with Putin. He claimed Putin told him that Zelensky is ran by the Israelis. Did you see that one?
No, I got to take a look.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
And there was another email
Yeah.
between Epstein and the Rothschild, and they said something about like, we'll talk soon, big opportunity in Ukraine.
Okay, so the context there, this was right after Crimea.
Right.
This is in 2014. This is right after Russia took over. So there was a lot of instability at that time. I believe it was actually the very date that Russia ended up, if I'm not correct, taking over Crimea. So it's not like, oh, this is so good that the Ukrainians are in charge. You know, from what I understand, I could be wrong. Like, please look that one up. But at the least, what I could say is that they were taking advantage of the chaos that was going on around that time.
Right.
And you
which
know, like
all global investors do. Anytime there's, chaos going on in the world, they whether it goes up or down, they try to get their investments in.
And look, like as far as the Russia-Jewish connection, not only is there one, but I honestly suspect this is something that Giuliani, our good friend of the show, by the way, Jason Reza Giuliani, this is something that he talked about in relation to October 7th. So he believes that these Russian Jewish oligarchs, who are far more, in line with Putin than they are with Israel, they may have played a role in what happened that day on October 7th, as far as lessening certain levels of security, allowing certain things to happen, because what he believes was the case was that Israel wanted to give more weaponry to Ukraine at that time, because they also have a relationship there. And
I thought
Russia,
they weren't arming Ukraine though.
well, that's the thing, right? Like they were in the beginning, but then they declined after October 7th.
And Russia declined to arm Iran too, because there's so many Russians in Israel. And that was another email. Ehud Barak and Epstein were talking about bringing in like 1 million Russians to Israel.
Yeah, it's his whole thing about, the demographics with the Muslim Arabs and all that kind of stuff. And that's like a different conversation to be had. But, as far as what his ultimate plan here was, like, did he want them to be Jewish? Did he want just like Russians to be in there for like the blood and soil kind of thing? So I'm not particularly sure what Ehud Barak wanted there. But Ehud Barak versus Netanyahu, like, they haven't really been close friends. And this is the other thing that I want to stress when we're talking about Jews and Judaism and Israel and all this stuff. I don't think you're going to find like a more fragmented people as far as one side arguing against the other side. And even in terms of the religion versus the, I wouldn't say necessarily atheism, but if you look at people like Max Nordau, who was like one of the early, proto-Zionist figures, as well as Theodor Herzl. These guys were the furthest that you can get from one of these messianic Jews talking about the fucking red heifer and the third temple and all that. They wanted to get rid of all that stuff. They wanted to have a place which is no different from the Westphalian ideal of a country that, is like Western and sophisticated and scientific and not superstitious. They wanted to get rid of all this religious bullshit. And what I'm wondering is, would that be the kind of Israel that you would accept, Adam?
Definitely, I prefer a secular and making right for what's happened to the Palestinians that were there. That's kind of the biggest issue, whether it's religious or not. Although thinking that it's prophecy to return and you're chosen by God and He promised you the land, and just religious justifications are a problem. But do I care about a secular state anywhere else in the world? Not really. It's the issue was the Nakba and the slaughtering of the villages and the taking of the land and then the illegal settlements expansion.
But even that's something that we have to look at with a fine-tooth comb. And again, I'm not going to be debating right now about all that stuff because it does really require the two of us to sit down, look at all the history books, look at all the documentation. Like just today, I was talking with a friend of mine about that particular incident where he was talking about how the Grand Mufti of Palestine at the time, he sold a lot of that land to the Jews. And one of the things that ended up happening, which was unexpected, is that you got a lot of Jews who also came from Australia. And in Australia, they knew how to take arid land, like desert type land, and to transform it into something where, the soil, by the use of, I think, eucalyptus trees, the soil can start getting better over time. And what ended up happening, from what I understand, I mean, you could even see it in terms of Israel's agricultural sector. They went into this land that was, barren desert, and they were able to terraform it over time. So that's just like, again, like, I'm not going to go into the rigmarole of who did what when. I just want to throw that in right now, just as a sidebar to consider, as far as what did they end up doing with the land that they had. And to me, that strikes me more as a kind of settler mentality, as a kind of like, not that different from what the Europeans were doing when they came to the New World. Not
Well,
allowing
they definitely
nature.
did some settling.
Yeah.
They did. I meant illegal settlements, like in the West Bank in the last few decades, is what I meant there. But yeah, they did definitely settle some barren land. But they also lied, and like the motto, like a people without a land without a people, because they ended up stealing like a lot of people's land and homes at the same time.
If we're talking about the land that was sold to them, see, that's the thing. I can't talk about this right now just because I want to have documentation in front of me that says this land was stolen. This is how we know, because this guy said this, versus this piece of land was sold for this amount of money. Here's the contract, right? Like, that's how we can go into it professionally later on. But like right now, like, I don't know if we'll have time to bring up those documents, but that is something that I do want to talk to you about later on. So let's agree. Let's set aside some time, maybe in a few months. Let's do all our research, and then let's get back to that subject, because I don't want to censor this. I want everything to be out in the open, but I just don't have the documents in front of me right now to say one way or another whether that time was settling or not settling. But as far as just the lay of the land with the demonic stuff, Neil's been sitting over here waiting, because I really want to talk about the Baal aspect here. So when a lot of these conspiracy people talk about Epstein and Baal and child sacrifice, a similar thing was going on with like the Pizzagate stuff back in the day too. Even though I would say with that, there were a lot of sus things, like the chicken lover. Do you remember the chicken lover post on Instagram from James Alefantis, who was running Comet Ping Pong? Like, to me, that's not great, because these are like
there was some
certain
weird shit going on.
indications. Yeah.
That's
But
another
as
thing
far
I'm
as-
trying to say to people is like, I'm skeptical about like some of these claims, but there's some truth to this stuff. There is some weird shit on the bottom of all this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's related to
Like
these
children
Baal
getting
type.
eaten, maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
But the closest we can get to with the children getting sacrifice to the gods is the people in the country that, what was it, Cato the Elder always talked about wanting to destroy. Was it Cato the Elder, or was it Cicero? No, it wasn't Cicero. Cato, yeah, it was Cato. So Cato, at the end of every speech, what did he say, Neil?
Carthage must be destroyed.
Carthage must be destroyed.
Yeah.
And I don't know if back then Cato was aware of the child sacrifice stuff, but from what I understand, they were finding places in, what is modern day Carthage today? It's Tunisia?
Tunisia, or
Tunisia, I think,
that's what
yeah.
I meant, that's what I meant.
They were finding evidence of there being child sacrifices in that area, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. We recently, actually, archaeologists discovered what's known as a tophet. It's what is it? It's a Semitic word. It's in Hebrew too, for human sacrifice. It's a human sacrifice altar, and they found bones of like babies. So there was child sacrifice happening in this particular tophet. It's like a little cave. I can show you a picture of it. The tophet in Carthage.
And this is something that relates to the goddess, right? Like, there was a goddess who was the wife of El.
Tanit and Baal. However, this is a different. This is a Baal means Lord.
Yeah.
So, there's so many different gods that are called the Lord. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many. When you talk about the traditional Baal, the one that's like the main major Baal, the Canaanite Baal, that's like a Zeus. He's like a Zeus figure. We don't know about any human sacrifice involved in that deity. This is a Carthaginian Baal. You can see this is the Carthage Tophet. This is the site, and let me see. This is it right here. This is they found this Tophet under the Roman foundation, where there was remains of children and an altar, and you can see like it would be filled up with blood. That's like crazy. That's a crazy actual.
Wait, so they did testing of the DNA in there, or like how do they know?
Well, you
it
could
was
just
blood?
see you could see how the altar looks. If it's a typical altar for a sacrifice of an animal or anything, but they found actual bones of like baby remains here at this site. So yeah, so you do have, and in this particular site, you're right, it's Tanit. So there's the votive inscription. Here's the sign of Tanit from the Carthage Tophet. So you can see like that's this is.
It's like she's shrugging her arms almost like, what do you want from me?
Yeah. It's weird. But this is Carthaginian, and they were the Phoenicians. So they do have a lineage that does
Flower
go back.
of Life, by the way.
Yeah, they do have a lineage that goes back to the Canaanites. So their ball might have some genetic roots going back to the original traditional ball that everyone knows and we understand. But like this is we got to separate the ball from the ball. If you know what I mean. There's different. There's not just one ball. This is what Christians do. They see the word ball and they go, this is the ball from the Bible. But like scholars and archaeologists and people who study history know there's Baal Haman, there's Baal Hadad, there's just the Canaanite ball from the Ugaritic sources. There's the New Testament has Beelzebub. Yeah, so that's another Baal, Lord of the Flies. It just means Lord. So you got to be careful on where you apply the
and Moloch. Moloch, does that mean king or does that mean a kind of sacrifice?
The word Melech, MLK in Hebrew, means king. The sacrifice, which has an etymological connection to the word king, and I'll explain why, is a type of sacrifice. So the Molech is the sacrifice that they're doing at this site, the Tophet. They're doing a Molech sacrifice there. That's a human sacrifice. So they're right about that. Molech is a human sacrifice, but it's not the deity. The deity, there is a deity called Melkam. People think might be related to him. It's a Midianite or Ammonite god. But the name Melech, the word king, comes from what's called this Babylonian king, Babylonian mock king sacrifice. There's a whole Wikipedia page for it. I'll show you right now.
And by the way, everybody, don't forget to subscribe, smash that button. Here we go.
Substitute king ritual, human sacrifice, right? Now, what they would do was, goes back to Sumer, I guess, Babylonia, Syria. I mean, there's a lot of scholars who are written on this. But what would happen was, when it was I'm just going to read this real quick. This is pretty fascinating. When it was determined that a ritual was necessary, scholars or scribes from the king's inner circle would inform him. Sometimes this was done solely by the chief exorcist, though generally it seems that a group of high-level scholars, such as the chief exorcist, chief scribe, and chief chanter, would collectively inform the king of the eclipse's bad omens. Normally, this was only done after the eclipse had already occurred, but in a few unusual cases, it seems to have happened beforehand. So what they would do was, after receiving permission from the king, the chief exorcist would begin searching for a man to serve as a substitute. Generally, this was not condemned criminal, a prisoner of war. This was a condemned criminal, a prisoner of war, or political adversary, or a menial laborer, just some slave, some pleb, right?
Sure.
An ideal substitute was someone whose death would not cause a great deal of unrest among the people. And the reason why they would look at this right here. Once the substitute was chosen, he would be taken to the palace where he would be washed, anointed. That's interesting. And given wine and food. He was so there's a last ritual. This is crazy because people. Just remember this. Plant a seed in your head for what I'm about to say about this.
Sure.
He was dressed in the king's robes, decorated with the royal diadem, and a crown of jewels placed on the throne. Extant ritual tablets also that a girl or virgin who was chosen as to serve as queen, seated by his side. So, why this is so fascinating, some people, and I'm one of the people who think this might be true too, some people think that what's happening in the New Testament is actually some sort of allegory of this Molech sacrifice, that Jesus is the mock king. He's literally mocked as a king, king of the Jews, gets a last Eucharist, right? He eats bread and wine, there's a Eucharist, and then he goes and gets sacrificed, and then there's Mary by his side, like the Virgin by his side, Virgin Mary. So all this lines up with Jesus. It's just kind of funny to me. I think whoever wrote the New Testament, the Gospels, might have been aware of this ancient Semitic ritual, and they're just kind of allegorizing Jesus to be the one to fulfill this, this thing. So
didn't they do something similar to the Jesus ben Ananias in
Jesus
Josephus?
ben Ananias? Yeah, he was killed.
They dressed him up like a mock king too, right?
I think so. I don't know if they mentioned that he's a king, but they do that something happened similar. That's why some people think that Jesus ben Ananias might be the actual Jesus. Some people have that theory. I don't know. I'll have to look into that though.
But as far as the theory that Adam, you were talking about on our last show, I asked you why it makes sense for the Jews to have Christianity come in and then just bully them all the time. But you brought up an interesting point in that it does bring the Jews together, where you have all this pressure that's leveled against you. But it just seems like such 4D chess as far as we're going to create Christianity to make the Christians hate us, but then they're also going to be within this Yahwist thing. So like the long-term plan here, as far as like the true believers within Judaism, how do you see that playing out?
I think it's a little more nuanced than that like they were planning to hate him and stuff. I think it started more just like as a schism, but
exactly.
I was wrong, by the way, about the Jesus ben Ananias thing. They didn't dress him up like a king.
Yeah,
they just whipped him and
that's right. Yeah.
Beat him and interrogated him, and he was saying the temple's going to be destroyed. That was his prophetic repetition, I believe. That's what it was. But another thing on the Baal thing is like it's clear from the Old Testament that there were gods, there were Canaanite gods, and they were sacrificing children to Baal and Moloch, right? But then Yahweh was like the innovation of they're not going to do that anymore. Like in the Old Testament, several stories, the binding of Isaac, where instead of sacrificing his son, it gets replaced by the bull stuck in
the ram in the thicket.
But by the way, not so with Yay Dude. I know what you're going to say, Neil.
No,
Yay
not
Dude,
even Yay Dude. That's not even Yahweh. That's El. So that's separate. But in the Old Testament, in the book of Judges, there is a human sacrifice. People forget about this. Because you're right. Adam's right. Throughout the law codes, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Yahweh is constantly saying no more human sacrifice. I don't want that. I want bulls and rams and sheep.
Yeah,
that's very clear. So we got to make that clear. We can't just be like he's a human sacrifice God. However, in the book of Judges, Jephthah tells Yahweh, he says, "Help me defeat my enemies in this next battle. Please help me defeat my enemies. I'll give you any offering you want if you help me defeat them." So he says he helps him defeat, and he says the first person you put in front of me, the first life you put in front of me, or whatever, I forgot what he says, I will sacrifice unto you to win the battle. And what comes walking out right in front of him? His virgin daughter. His virgin daughter. And and the text even says and then the sacrifice was done. It doesn't say, oh, she got away or anything. So there is a human sacrifice in the Bible to Yahweh, and he accepts it. So just
like Game of Thrones.
Wow.
Yeah.
Remember
but what do you guys?
The king sacrifices the witch gets the king to sacrifice the daughter.
Exactly.
Or it's like the Godhead in Berserk. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that manga Berserk. Manga anime, highly recommended, by the way. But within the Berserk lore, you get to become an apostle, and it's like this overpowered type of almost like quasi-deity being. But in order to do it, you have to sacrifice what you consider to be like the most precious thing to you. So there's like one instance where this nobleman sacrifices his daughter, who he loves, but he sacrifices her specifically because he loves her.
People think this. So this happens in Homer. Homer's the prelude to the Iliad. Agamemnon wants to win the battle. This is a mimesis of Homer right here. What you're reading in this Bible. This is what's going on here. Homer started this, so we got to blame the Greeks too, because Agamemnon prays to Artemis, help me win this battle against the Trojans, and I'll give you any sacrifice you want. And the sacrifice is demanded is his daughter, his virgin daughter. So here you have the same story happening in Judges 11, where he says, the Spirit of the Lord came to Jephthah. He crossed Gilead. If you give me the Ammonites, he's talking to Yahweh. So this is not just him just talking to himself. He's talking to the Spirit of Yahweh. If you give me the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house, meet me. I will return in triumph from the Ammonites, will be the Lord Yahweh's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. Jephthah went over, fought the Midianites, and the Lord, Yahweh, gave the Midianites so he gets Yahweh says, I accept your deal. He devastated 20 towns. Israel subdued Ammon. When Jephthah returned to his home, who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing to the sound of timbrels? She was only a child, except for he had neither a son nor daughter.
She was an only child. She was an only child.
Only begotten daughter, yeah. Mm-hmm. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "Oh no, my daughter, you have brought me down and I'm devastated. I made a vow that I cannot break." And then she says, this is exactly what happens in Homer. Her name is Iphigenia. Iphigenia. And she says, Father Agamemnon, if you made a vow, then I am very happy to be the sacrifice. Please, let's do it. Like, she's the one who tells him to do it. And then this happens again here. You have given your word to Yahweh. Do to me just as you promised, just as Yahweh avenged of your enemies, the Ammonites. But grant me this one request. Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends, because I will never marry. She's a virgin, by the way. You may go and let her, and he let her go for 2 months. She went with her friends to the hills and wept because she would never marry. This is the crazy part. After the 2 months, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed, and she was a virgin. So it tells you she does get sacrificed. She doesn't run away. And there are some apologists out there who say she ran away. That's why I'm saying
crazy. That. But it's interesting, like with the Torah, if we were to look at it as not this complete monolithic text, but kind of a competition of different worldviews, if we then look at somebody like Plato, who was going against a lot of this, prevalent thought at the time from all these poets and, people like Homer, as you mentioned, where these gods get away with a lot of this bad stuff, then this potential like noble lie that would ensure more of this good versus evil kind of scenario. When it comes to the Torah, there's an element of that too, right? Like the good versus evil, partially maybe inspired by Zoroastrian thought as well. But how much do you think Plato, linking Plato now to Judaism, has to do with this competitive nature, which is much more in line with, self-actualized Western man, as opposed to the superstitious daughter and child sacrificing, Canaanite
you can see it all over Genesis 1. It's almost like rewriting Timaeus with a few differences. The idea of the breath of life, the aperion, the pneuma, those are all Platonist concepts. The breath, and then the idea that he forms man in his image, where Plato makes a similar concept. Plato makes a similar claim in Timaeus that humans are like the image of the one, but like just less light, less spirit. Mm-hmm. So there is that's an unheard of thing in antiquity. That starts with Plato, and then you see it in the Hebrew Bible. That's another reason why Gemerkin says the Hebrew Bible is inspired by Plato, because you can go through Mesopotamia, you can go through Egypt. Humans are not made in the images of the gods. It only happens in Plato and the Bible, and then everything after.
Sorry to cut in here, but I am curious. What about people like Pythagoras? What about supposedly like these mystery schools that Plato may have studied under? Were they maybe focusing on that whole, as above, so below type deal? Or like, how do we know for sure?
Oh yeah, we have the sources that we don't have, like primary sources of Pythagoras, but we have secondary. We have Plato, for example, telling us what Pythagoras' teachings were, Aristotle, all the bunch of other stuff. We know pretty well what Pythagoras' ideas were, and a lot of it is this monistic, worldview. Philosophical, and they were very critical. Like I mentioned, Homer and human sacrifice. They were critical of this. They hated it. They were like, no, we're done with that. Like we're gonna redo our myths to be more philosophical, more and more up to date with the philosophical ideas of the time period.
Mm.
And you can see Judaism's following that trend.
Yeah. But not following it enough. I don't know. Like, that's
Well,
the thing. Like, where
well,
does
that's the
this start
thing.
to break from? Yeah.
That's the thing. You can. So what I would say is there are parts of the text that make it into the Bible that you can see are reflective of like older stories that they just knew were sacred that they had to get in there. But then when you actually read like the law codes and Deuteronomy and Numbers and the Psalms and the Proverbs, you can see the philosophical influences at play. So there are these weird stories like Judges and all over the place that are like, what the hell? And then you just go, oh, that's because this is all being patched together. These are all different stories that are patched together into one. That's why it's like that. That's why it's so confusing.
Yeah, Adam, any thoughts on this? Yeah.
Well, yeah. So as I was saying, Yahweh replaced the child sacrifice, and Yahweh, the Baal and Moloch are like the bad idols that he doesn't want the Israelites or the Hebrews to follow. He's meant to follow him and only do animal sacrifices. So because of this Baal bank account thing in Iran, you probably saw last week, they had a big effigy of a bull of Baal, and they had the picture of Epstein on there, and I think Trump and Netanyahu and the American flag, Israeli flag, and they burnt it. And then all the Jews are laughing online like, you guys don't understand. You're not owning us by burning idols. Like the whole goal of Judaism and Yahweh is opposing idol worship, opposing human sacrifice. So it's crazy.
So
these Iranians.
Stupid.
No, if they wanted to offend the Jews, they should have burnt like a picture of Yahweh, which there's no pictures of it because it's no graven images.
Make an idol of the Ark of the Covenant and like Moses and the 12 tribes or something, and burn that.
Or a menorah,
but they're Muslim. But they're Muslim, so they can't do that.
I know. That's the funny part. This is what me and Adam are trying to tell people. You're playing their game and losing. Like you just destroyed Baal. Well, have you read Kings and Chronicles where Elijah and Elisha just throw down fire from heaven to destroy Baal? Literally, Baal gets destroyed with fire in the Old Testament. The Jews are looking at this and going, "Oh, thanks, cool, thanks for that. We don't like Baal either. We don't like
this is so
pentagrams
tacky,
either."
by the way. Look at this. They got the Egyptian monolith going on.
Yeah,
Look.
and that's another thing. The Exodus story. There's anti-Egyptian rhetoric in the Bible all over the place. They come out of Egypt. They destroy
Egypt's
Egypt.
the enemy of the Jews in the Old Testament. The Pharaoh's one of the biggest enemies.
Look at his mustache.
No, they're so
like
dumb.
Super Mario.
They think they're like owning the Jews by burning idols that the Jews are opposed to. Meanwhile, they're worshiping the God of Abraham.
Yeah, this reminds me of like if there was like people in like, I don't know, what's like a really hick area in the South somewhere. I don't know. I'm not
Kentucky.
Yeah, this is like this is like people in Kentucky. This is the Iranian version of people in Kentucky thinking they're doing something, and they're just self-owning themselves.
No, but I
think
think this
people
is
burning a statue of Satan to try to like offend the Christians. That's the equivalent of what they just did right here.
Well, I think this is made specifically for Americans. That's why they did it. They didn't do it to convince people who are in Iran.
Why would Americans care about this?
Because I think right now Americans are getting into the same stuff that you were talking about, Adam, where they're getting into a lot of these demonic hidden forces that are running our world, and they want to feel like they've got the secrets of the universe. And I think it's also an ego thing where you don't want somebody to tell you that I said this
you mean
before,
they're trying to impress the Americans?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't want somebody to tell you that the sky is blue. You want somebody to tell you that the sky is purple. You want to be given some secret information that only you and a select group of people have so that you feel superior. Your ego gets inflated, and also you think that you're fighting on the right side of history once again. And that's why whenever there's like BTR programs, especially about Ukraine, I'd say Ukraine is like the biggest example. Whenever I have people that are, skeptical of Ukraine or, on pro-Russia or whatever, the people who are in their audience would completely ignore anything that's being said about Ukraine in a positive light. They would only focus on whatever their guy says. And this is like a real big issue in any of these spaces when it comes to audience capture, because people have already made up their minds. like Adam, I'm sure that portion of audience that you have who now goes against you or has gone against you maybe for like a longer amount of time, where now it's, maybe building up even more than before. Maybe they originally got into you because they saw you doing things like, blowing the candles on that menorah thing outside. Or like, yeah, this guy's on our side, fuck him.
That was a couple weeks ago.
That was a couple of weeks ago. There we go. So, but that is kind of like that thing where
that was
the
AI,
surface,
Lev, by the way. You know that was AI, right?
Really? I didn't know. That's what I thought you were right there.
That's the power of AI for you, right
It
there.
looks similar. Yep. I got dunked on there. Fair enough.
It's pretty wild. Christians that are like up in arms about child sacrifice and cannibalism when they worship Jesus, who is a child sacrifice, and then they drink his blood and eat his flesh symbolically. Yeah. So that's a little ironic, but this is the same cope. This is what I always talk about. The cope that like the e-crusaders or the internet, so-called anti-Zionist Christians, they'll always say, they say the Jews of the father is the devil, and they secretly worship Satan, and they're devil worshipers, right? That's one of the accusations against them. It's pure cope. Just because Christians know that they're worshiping the God of the Old Testament, and they don't want to admit that they worship the same God that the Jews do, and that's the whole point of Judaism, was to get the Gentiles to worship that God. So they instead say, no, they don't worship Yahweh, they worship Satan. And then their proofs of this is like fake rabbi clips or a made-up manufactured quote or a short clip of some rabbi out of context. The Jews are against idol worship. They worship Yahweh. They believe they're chosen by Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's supposedly the father of Jesus. So Christians worship the same God. They'll cope all day. There's no such thing as Judeo-Christian, and Jesus wasn't Jewish, and these people are delusional, fringe, largely psychotic, some of the worst copers and liars I've ever seen.
But as far as being in that world, like you were on InfoWars before, like you talk with a lot of these people.
InfoWars isn't even. I was never a guest on InfoWars with Alex Jones.
Was this a call-in?
You had programs. I remember when I was watching InfoWars, you were on the screen, like they were showing your clips. So
They showed like a
back in the day
video I made of Alex Jones.
No,
this was reviewing you. They were reviewing you.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember exactly the context. All I know is that I saw Adam Green's face on InfoWars where you were talking about something in relation to Israel. So that's all I remember right now. But the main point,
I had a debate with Owen Schroyer. That wasn't with Alex Jones.
No, that was recent though. I'm talking about like years ago.
I called in to Alex one time and talked.
Oh,
to
maybe
that
was it. Israel. Maybe that was it. Yeah.
No, I've never been a guest on with Alex Jones.
Yeah. Well, now I don't even know if you'll get the opportunity.
And they're not really particularly since October 7th. They've been a little more Israel critical, like some of the other hosts. But Alex has always been known for never talking about Jews. Basically, it's always the globalist or the Illuminati or the shape-shifting clockwork elves or the demons or the Satanists and globalist Luciferian New World Order Antichrist, which is like just Jewish eschatology, basically.
But if we separate three things that are going on right now in society that I think tend to overlap in the minds of a lot of people. On one hand, you have these satanic, baby-eating, demonic entity people. So that's group number one. Group number two, which I think is the group that you're talking about the most, are the Jews that talk about this Jewish supremacy religion type of after the end of the world scenario, where Jews would, and again, like if I were to be devil's advocate for the Jewish side for a bit, which I know everybody's expecting me to be that anyway.
Great term.
Yes, exactly. Then
Isn't that always your advocate? Just kidding.
that would imply to me, as far as Jews being seen as, a light unto the nations, where at least like with some of the rabbis I talk with, like the Hasidic people, their view was that we're going to be like super duper moral people. Everybody's going to see how moral we are, how awesome and nice we are. And they're going to then just, like repeat what we're doing. And there's going to be peace on earth. And as far as the Noahide laws, if I were to be devil's advocate, I would say, all right, big deal. They'll do the Noahide laws. Who cares? We're all going to live peacefully. Everybody's going to get along. We're not going to have like armed guards that are going to be enforcing the will of Yahweh. It's going to be more of like this kind of hive mind, everybody like feeling good and doing the right thing. So that would be my steel manning of the Jewish world domination thing, at least as I've talked with like some of the Hasidim, the way that they see it. Now, I'm not saying that that's all Jews at all. Like, I'm sure that there are plenty of Jews out there that would want it to be, you know, more enforced and, you know, getting people to do certain things the hard way. But I haven't really seen that particular example. So what I don't know is like the clips you were talking about in our previous episode, how many of those could be misconstrued as just want to be like a light onto the nations. And yeah, obviously they're going to do the Noahide laws because, you know, those are laws for them and whatever. And that's the way it's going to work with Yahweh in charge. But it doesn't seem like they want to have a dictatorship where it's going to be enforced at the tip of a gun. It seems to be more of like this transcendental change that's going to affect the entire world type thing.
Yeah, well, depending on the rabbi, they'll describe it differently. But yeah, you did a fairly accurate steel man there. Like they go, yeah, where they're going to follow the mitzvahs and the 613 commandments, and then they do like there's a verse where it says like the Gentiles will like abandon the lies they inherited and then say we heard God is with you and follow you, and then want to like, you know, offer up sacrifices and gifts to the Holy Land and the temple. And but like from their point of view, it's good because it's their plan, it's their prophecies, it's their mission, they're the chosen people. But like I see it as like they invented a god, they said they chose them, and now they're meant to. And with the Messiah, like the Messiah does say it's going to tread the winepress, he's going to conquer the nations, and the peace utopia messianic age is like after the wars. And also, I was going to talk about this with all of this Baal, Satan worship, you know, rise of anti-Israel people, especially after October 7th in the internet. It's what we hear everywhere. We're always talking about anti-Semitism. Like every weekend, there's another like big Jewish conference where they're, you know, always talking about anti-Semitism. Endless organizations focused on anti-Semitism, but that's like inherent in Judaism. The idea of like the suffering servant, and they're in exile, scattered amongst the nations. And they believe that a sign when the whole world turns against them and there's a huge explosion in anti-Semitism, like that's a sign that the redemption is near, the birth pains of the Messiah. Yeah. And then the Messiah, they're all going to turn against Israel, and then the Messiah is going to intervene and then destroy the haters that turned against Israel. And then they'll have their Noahide utopia where everybody's like worshiping Yahweh together.
I mean, imagine just being like one of these Jews back in the old shtetl, where everybody's like kicking your ass and kicking you out everywhere. You're taking like the, what do you call it? Like you give the money, what's called the debt. What's that usury thing? Usury, yeah. Well, you're practicing usury because the Christians don't want to do it themselves. Then once that's done, they kick you out of that country, yada, yada, yada. You have to have some kind of a coping mechanism at that point not to go fucking bonkers. So, of course, in your mind, it does kind of make sense to say like, oh, we have all this suffering onto us, so there's going to be an effect. And in a way, like you could kind of see it in terms of what the Jews end up doing. They didn't become like, you know, Reverend Al Sharpton and the black community. They focused more on studying. And yes, of course, I'm not going to be, you know, I'm not going to be turning my eyes at the fact that there are Jewish lobbies, obviously, and they do have a lot of power. And I'm sure, as an example, we were talking yesterday, friends of mine at this dinner, about how in Crown Heights, where you have the Lubavitcher Rebbe people, they also have these guards who are Jews who the rabbis themselves described as being like thugs. Not thugs in like the black community way, but thugs as in there's these like young Jewish guys who are like really beefy and, you know, not afraid to brawl, kind of like the opposite of the, you know, pathetic Jewish weenie stereotype, right? And these thuggish guys make sure that, you know, the other thugs in Crown Heights, you know, the non-Jewish thugs, don't start beating Jews up. And they have a whole system where they're probably going to get let off because they have, you know, very smart Jewish lawyers and all of that. But to me, like, I see that as a survival thing that doesn't really harm, you know, Farmer John in Arkansas. it harms somebody who's going to want to pick a fight with Jews in Crown Heights. But to me, the ultimate question here is one of teleology. Like, yeah, Jews may believe this and that, but as far as what is practically being done, a lot of the examples, Adam, that you've showed earlier, especially this one guy at what's his name? Tammy Faye was his wife. Who's the guy? The Christian guy, Baker. Who? You know who I'm talking about, right?
Jim Baker.
Jim Baker. Thank you.
Oh,
So you were talking about how there was this. You were posting a video of this Jewish guy, this messianic Jewish guy, in the Jim Baker show, and to me, like Jim Baker, like you can't get more pathetic than that. This guy who hauls around these food packets with these shovels, like these are a bunch of clowns, and these are the people who I find are the most talking about the red heifer and the Messiah and all of this stuff. Like, to me, these are completely like worthless examples wherein, let's say, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, for instance, Schneerson, yeah, like he may talk about this end of the world scenario where everybody's going to go through this consciousness thing. But at the same time, he also, when he blesses the dollars, it isn't, like, to me, based on, well, we love money so much, so we're going to, bless these $1 bills.
Charity.
Well, I mean, $1 isn't that much of a charity, if we're being honest.
Symbolic
but I think,
charity is what.
Sure, but what it points to, I think, is that I don't think it's right to turn one's nose up at money if at the end of the day that money means that, let's say, your grandma gets to have this operation. You know what I mean? Or like your son is going to have like some illness, being able to be taken care of at the doctor. You know what I mean? Like, money is a means to an end. And if the end means like people being able to, take care of whatever horrible things may occur to them in life, like just saying like, oh, I'm above thinking about money, that's not good either. So that would be my other steel manning of the whole money thing, where it's like, money's not the God. Money is just the unfortunate way that people are able to, procure a living here. And yes, a lot of these Jews are on welfare too. I'm not going to lie about that. And I don't see that as being a good thing. So
they run some big Amazon businesses too.
Sure. And again,
all types of businesses, yeah.
If there are certain holes in the system, right? Like if there are certain shortcuts that they end up finding, it does kind of become are you blaming the player or are you blaming the game kind of thing? Because if the U.S. government, let's say, allows certain ways of making free money to be out there, and certain groups happen to like figure out how to do that.
But no one ever says that. No one ever asks that question when it comes to like Somalis or I don't know, Puerto Ricans.
No, that's true.
They just go, "What the hell? Get them out!" Like that's the like.
Yes.
Then it's like, okay, Washington Heights has a population of this many thousand people, and X percent of it is on welfare. Everyone's like, "Well, that's New York."
Completely true. Completely true. Same, by the way, with the Russians. Like a lot of the Russians, including Russian Jews, but not limited to Russian Jews, when they came over here. In fact, when we came over here to the United States, there was someone who I remember told us, you guys have to pretend to be crazy, because if you pretend to be crazy, the government's going to give you free money. So this has been going on for a long time. My retort to that, though, would be if you go into like a Orthodox Jewish town in...
By the way, just real quick,
yes.
New York State, if you just say I have no income and I have no bank account, they're giving it to you. That's how easy it is there.
Yeah.
And you might get audited later, but you're getting on it though. You're going to get on it. That's how New York's crazy, dude. Anyways, go ahead.
So Adam, have you ever been to any like Jewish, I wouldn't say town because it's not a town. It's more like a district in, let's say, Brooklyn, for instance. Have you ever been to Sheepshead Bay?
I've never been to New York.
Really?
By the way, Adam, how many Jews do you know, personally speaking, out of curiosity?
I know the top Jew is Adam King. He's the one that's doing the red heifer thing.
No, like personally?
I know Duvid. I know Adam King, Andrew Mayer.
Again, Andrew Mayer. Look, Andrew Mayer came on my show, insulted my poor guest that he came on, called him the F word. Like the gay F word. What's his name? Burns, who's like the pro-Ukrainian guy, but he's more on the left. But anyway, the reason why I'm kind of interested in the names you said right now is these seem to be like the fringe clowns of the Jewish universe. And what I'm curious about is whether thing, I'm not saying like it would change your mind or whatever, but in terms of just the kind of maintenance that you end up seeing of society when you go into an actual Jewish neighborhood versus a Somali neighborhood. To me, that's the question of priorities, like Maslow's hierarchy.
So when you
of
see
needs.
Rebbe is the Messiah posted all over Washington Heights, is that supposed to make you, I'm just kidding.
It's better than graffiti. It's not the worst thing, But in terms of Jewish neighborhoods, though, if you go to, I mean, you can peel them off.
I will one day. I want to go to Crown Heights one day, and I'll go interview a bunch of Jews over there.
Hold on,
and by the way, here's the thing. Here's the thing with
what I'm
Crown
talking
Heights.
about real quick, so they don't.
Yes, the Lubavitcher
Rebbe
Rebbe.
have no idea what I'm talking about. This is if you go to New York City, and this is in Washington Heights, right?
Yeah.
Hey, my screen's on the bottom.
Oh, hold on a second. Here we go.
If you go, what is it? It's Washington Heights, right? That's the name of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Crown Heights.
If you go there, you'll see these stickers everywhere, and I don't know. Do they think he's the Messiah? Is that what's going on here?
Some in Chabad do, but it's divided.
But anyway, that's what I meant by that. Just so people watching
I
are
wanted
like,
to
"What
mention
did you
something
say?"
else too. About the whole like Baal, they're secretly worshiping Moloch. They're all secret devil worshipers. Christians actually get off on this because they need it to happen. So like they go, we're anti-Zionist Jews. That's not real. That's antichrist. But it's like they still believe that that it's God's prophecy and it has to happen, or else Jesus is never going to return. So in a weird paradoxical way, Christians need the red heifer. They need the third temple. They need the Antichrist to come. Or else Jesus will never return, and God's prophecies will never unfold. So even they're opposed to it. It's only like on a superficial level, because as it's happening, you see these Christians, they get excited, they get giddy, they go, "That means Jesus is coming. That means my prophecies are real."
Yep.
So
yeah,
Neil, I wanted to ask you this too. You mentioned this; it's a good point, Lev. You were talking about the Jews in the Middle Ages and the shtetls. Is that it?
Shtetls.
Is that right?
Shtetls.
Yeah. You talked about like how they're reading the Bible and it's a cope about how they're going to get out of exile. But Judaism actually developed as a cope, right? This is what I have for Neil. So if it developed around like Alexandria, 3rd century, when they were under the Greeks, right? So do you think that they just like invented all these stories in the Torah about being oppressed by bigger empires like Egypt and the Exodus and Babylon and Assyrians?
Yeah, I do. I think they're
Persians.
Now, I think there might be layers of these texts that do go back to maybe 5th, 6th, even 7th century BC. It's hard to separate that. Like the same thing goes for Homer. The Iliad has sections of it that look like it's like late Bronze Age, very archaic language, very archaic descriptions going on. But we don't date Homer to 1200. We just date Homer to when we have it, which is 8th century BC. For the Bible, I think the same thing's happening. There's layers that do go back farther, but the form we have it in is definitely edited in a way that wants to backdate itself so that these prophets like Isaiah and Hosea and all these, Ezekiel and Jeremiah, they're pinpoint predicting the Assyrians are going to come and they're going to wipe all these nations out. The Ammonites, even the Israelites, and everyone around, all of us, we're all going to be wiped out by the Assyrians. And then it happens, right? And then they're even saying the name Cyrus by name in Isaiah.
Oh,
Isaiah chapter 45, 44. Cyrus, my anointed, my shepherd, you will lead the people back to their holy land. Like this is supposed to be 200 years before King Cyrus even existed. So do we really think that's not how prophecies work? We know the Oracle of Delphi would say like something like the bull is sacrificed. The sacrifice is ready. The bull will be killed. And it's like, who's the bull? Who's the sacrifice? And then you find, and then the war happens. And the Persians win the war. And then you go, oh, the Lydians were the bull. It's very vague. There's never a prophecy where someone's name is listed by name 200 years prior. That's nonsense. So the point I'm trying to make
bullshit.
The point I'm trying to make here is they're writing mythology about their past. They're incorporating. They had some idea that they came out of Egypt at some point because the Hyksos dynasty, that's a real thing. So they sort of come up with an idea of like, here's how we got out of Egypt. Here's how we ended up here. They write the
But
Exodus.
clearly the theme that they developed was they're the small minority being oppressed by the larger empires. So and
that's
fantasizing
all
about
they knew.
and like the Dead Sea Scrolls, fantasizing for a messianic figure to come and God to intervene so that they, as the chosen people, they can overcome their oppressors. That is the origins of Judaism.
And it looked like in the 2nd century BC, it did look like the Hasmoneans were starting to become a real power for the first time ever in their entire history. The Hasmoneans have a kingdom. They have a king. They have their own government. They have their own law system. They conquer the Galilee for the first time. That was always part of Phoenicia. Like their border was Samaria. They had Samaria was the northern kingdom, and then Jerusalem was the south. So they're going in. They're taking Edom. They conquer Edom. Now Israel's bigger in the south. They conquer Galilee. Now it's bigger in the north. Now they have a whole country for the first time ever. So now they're starting to get really like, oh, God is on our side. I can see why they think this way. I don't like this makes sense. None of it doesn't make sense to me.
Another thing with like this false accusations about them secretly worshiping Satan or Baal or Moloch, you'll also see a lot that they're secret Babylonians. They don't really believe in Yahweh. They close the doors of the synagogue and they're worshiping a Babylonian god, just pretending to be Jews.
Yeah, or Nebo.
That's one of the big theories. And that's interesting too, because Babylon is the enemy empire in the book of Daniel, which was written under Greek, when they were under the Greeks. Written in Greek too, I believe, right?
There's a Greek version of it, but it's Aramaic and Hebrew. Yeah.
Anyway, and also the Babylon represents Rome in the book of Revelation, and about God like conquering Rome, a symbolic empire in the end times. And then now all the conspiracy theorists are saying like America is the new Babylon, whereas rabbis are saying we're the new Edom, another enemy of the Jews in the Bible that's destroyed, but in
also
the end
a
times.
Brother. It's a close
enemy. The brother, right? Brother rival,
a closer enemy than Babylon.
Yeah, but that's the other thing. Instead of like saying like, no, these Jews just worship Yahweh and believe in the Torah, they go, no, they're satanic, Talmudic, like secret Babylonians. Like or they'll also say they're Khazarians. They're all secret Khazarians that have infiltrated all the religions. All of this is just deflection from Christians and Muslims who don't want to pinpoint Yahweh or the Torah as having anything to do with like what's going on, because they believe it.
And they don't want to admit that their religion is a derivative of their Jewish religion. Like they hate that. So they're trying to come up with a way to rationalize, post hoc rationalization, fallaciously go, well, I can't be descended from their tradition. We have to have our. So they're actually heretics. They're actually wannabes. The real Israelites are actually different. They're some sort of Khazarian thing, because they don't want to have to deal with the fact that, oh wow, we have to go through them to even be valid and to begin with. Like their prophets have to be real for Jesus to be a Messiah to begin with. Or even in Islam, the Quran talks about Noah and the 12 and talks about Jacob and Israel and all this stuff. Like they come out of that tradition. They don't want to admit it.
Now, what exactly do you see going on with somebody like Alexander Dugin, where not only is he in the thumbnail, but he seems to be combining a lot of things that are also partly pagan, partly Christian. And he also, like, what was his quote about Epstein? What does he see Epstein as? Like the modern tradition or something like that?
Heir of Rav. He called him the heir of Rav. So like not real Jews, or like apostate Jews. That's kind of what that means. Like the evil secular, which frames the Hasidic Orthodox Jews as like in the good light, where they're bad. But what is Dukin doing? All over the timeline on Twitter, it's always the evil satanic West is demonic and needs to be destroyed. And he's also like he's apparently like instigating all sides of the Abrahamic faiths and how their different end times prophecies kind of converge, where the Muslims are waiting for Jesus to return, the Mahdi to come to defeat the Dajjal, the Antichrist, which they view as like a messianic Jewish figure. And then same with Christians, are waiting for the Antichrist to rule so Jesus can come and conquer that. And he really is just instigating all sides to try to hasten some apocalypse where the West gets destroyed. That's what he's up to.
Yeah, I mean, as far as whether or not he's serious about a lot of this stuff, back in the day, like my family were in the community of Russian dissidents and intellectuals, and they all saw Dugin as being this weirdo dummy. Nobody took him seriously, like during that time.
Yeah.
So I think
No,
that
he's all,
people
yeah.
had
That
to.
this is one of the misconceptions. People will say Adam thinks that Dugin controls Putin. That's not the argument. It's undeniable, though, that Dugin, as a philosopher amongst English speakers in the West and Europe, he is a highly influential figure. That you see all the people promoting the America Western hegemony needs to go down. He wants the multipolar world of Russia and China to rise up and America to fall. And then he's using and co-opting religious prophecies to help hasten that end.
Yeah, and people like Max Blumenthal and like all of that cast of characters, and Tucker Carlson as well. So
Jackson Hinkle.
Jackson Hinkle.
Yeah.
Oh, and also this actually brings me to a thing that I wanted to discuss. The Association for Investment in Popular Action Committee Syrian Solidarity Movement. But before that, I was linking that to there was this award that was received by people who I was just mentioning right now, which I had it over here. I don't know where it went. But this movement over here, it's associated with the same people that we were talking about. And this movement supported the Assad regime. And I believe it got money from Iran. But give me a second. I'm going to find exactly where I got this from, because there is another award ceremony that a lot of these same people were participating in. But in terms of your world, how much would you say that your audience is also within the Duginist camp? Like, do you see them being like half and half, or like 80-20, or none at all?
Well, like my loyal audience and people that have watched me for years, I'd say like none at all. But you know, some people that see me sometimes, like there was a clip posted of me talking about Alex Jones mentioning Dugin the other day, and some pro-Russia influencers started attacking me. It's crazy. I've been accused of being a Russian agent, but also like a Ukrainian NATO agent or CIA agent as well. You just get accused of absolutely everything, but I've never been on the Putin simping fanboy, and neither is my audience. Although there is occasionally, there will be, because it's so popular. You look at like the Dissident Right or even Fox News, Tucker Carlson, InfoWars. Every big conservative sphere is generally pretty pro-Russia. Like they see them as like the traditional and Christian and fighting against like our Zionist government. Although Russia somehow is always not criticizing Jews or Israel. It's more so like the evil West, or they'll blame America for what's going on in Gaza, for instance. Or they'll say they're all a bunch of Satanists. Putin doesn't say the West is run by like Judeo-Christian Zionists, right? That want to usher in the Messiah and, you know, the return of Jesus. He doesn't say that. He says they worship, you know, they're satanic pedophiles, basically.
Well, that's, by the way, well, that's the other reason why the religious Jews are in kind of a fucked position right now in Russia. So the situation is this. This is what I have from my insiders, you know, the people who are actually, you know, familiar with the Hasidic Jewish community there in Russia and Ukraine. The problem is that Putin has carte blanche to do really bad things to the Jewish community if he wants to, and he doesn't want to right now. And the leaders who are associating with Putin, who are like representatives of that community, you know, like that weird looking wizard guy.
Burrell Lazar is the main
Lazar,
one.
yes,
Lazar,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, again, I feel very unfortunate for, like, you know, what is he going to do? His face looks like a, you know, like a demon elf. I don't know. It's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if you're born like that? Or even, look, even somebody like Vladimir Zelensky, he looks a little bit elf-like, right? Like you can imagine him, you know, being like an elf living in some woodland forest in a fantasy setting. You know, because
like a
he has,
wizard.
like, the ears.
He looks like a Lazar. It looks like the
No,
guy
no,
from
Zelensky, I mean.
Lord of the
Zelensky,
Rings.
I mean.
But aren't elves usually like almost unanimously in fantasy texts described as like being like blonde hair, blue eyes.
All right,
like-
Hobbit elf, whatever, like a mix of a
Okay,
hobbit and an elf.
Hobbit, there you
Yeah,
go.
More like a
okay.
hobbit.
Yeah.
But I would
Okay,
say,
fine.
who's the guy?
No,
the bad
it's
guy
the
in
ears
Lord of
though.
the
He has
Rings?
like the ears that go like that. That's what I'm.
Does he?
It's a thing that's found in not all, but like some Ashkenazi Jews, like their ears kind of. I mean, your ears kind of go a little bit like that too. So I'm not saying it's like
Mine?
every. No. Adam's
mine.
a little bit going like that.
I must be.
But
I
I
think
do-
it's German though. That's the German thing.
No, yours are okay. So they're not pointy. If they were pointy, that would be closer to Zelensky's. But they do like go out like in this formation.
I've
like
never
that.
noticed his ears before, to be honest.
No,
You're
that's
going
okay.
physiognomy on us.
Yes, exactly. No, but
Yeah.
the reason why I'm mentioning it, which I think is important, is because if you're born with certain features, it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, you're just going to have to rest with it and try to do the best job that you can. So in this way, like, part of me isn't even blaming Lazar for kissing Putin's ass, because if you were in his position, what would you do if you knew that if you weren't kissing his ass, if you were speaking out against the war, then the Jews that you're like the representative of will be in big trouble because these, and by the way, this is something that, from what I understand, a lot of like pro-Jewish organizations don't like. They don't like the fact that these Jews are stuck in Russia. They wish they would have gone the hell out of there, years ago. Yet they're in there because of all of this opposite, like, oh, my rabbi ancestors were like buried here. It's like, dude, this government is going to annihilate anybody who speaks out against it. So now you're in this fucked position where people could point the finger at you saying like, hey, why aren't they talking about, Ukraine? It's like, well, that's why. It's an unfortunate situation.
Okay, on the Ukraine thing.
Yeah.
What I've seen of Jews or like Hasidic Chabad Jews in Russia is that they say Putin loves them and that there's no anti-Semitism and that they're really safe and stuff.
They have to say that. Well, I mean, it is safe now, but that's the thing. It's safe now because they're saying that it's safe now. You see what I mean? Like they have to be saying the right things, and they're deathly afraid, but they're also really fucking obstinate. They're like donkeys when it comes to staying in these old shtetl-related areas. It's like, forget this. You got Israel. Why not Israel? Go to Israel already. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. I don't know.
I see them saying that they're safer in Russia than they would be in America. That it's not safe for them in America anymore.
No, it's all
You-
propaganda.
You don't think so? You think they're actually
don't
just
think so.
scared? You think they're scared of Putin?
Yes,
They're
I think
scared
they're
of
100%.
speaking out about what are they scared about though? Just speaking up for
Speaking out
Ukraine?
about the fact that Russia's been sending drones, murdering kids in orphanages in Ukraine, by those drones bombing them, because they realize that even though
But it's
Jews are
Christians
also
and Nazis. I thought that they're bombing. It's like it's Orthodox Christians in Ukraine, and Putin's saying that they're
that's
Azov
not
and
even
Nazis.
that's not even a thing, because that's not even a thing as far as where the Jews' minds are at, because they know that in the Azov battalion even you have Jews that are serving there. It's not this neo-Nazi thing that a lot of these people ever make it out to be. You have somebody like the chief rabbi of Ukraine who's like been super pro Ukraine this whole time, and he's like well respected. So it's a tough thing. It's a tough position for them to be in. I bet a lot of them would love to speak out against the Russian government, but they're just afraid.
I've also seen some rabbis saying that like they view both Ukraine and Russia as being historically anti-Jewish and persecuting them, so they're kind of okay.
See,
with
that's also a
them.
fiction. So from what I understand, could be wrong, it was the Russian Kazakhs, not the Ukrainian Kazakhs, that were persecuting the Jews in terms of the pogroms. Even in like those border areas, it was still like the Kazakhs that came from Russia. The Ukrainian ones, from what I understand, they were more in a pro-Western zone. But what is interesting, there was this guy, are you familiar with Robert Barnes? Lawyer?
Yeah, that's Alex Jones's friend.
Yeah,
Jones's
so
lawyer.
Robert Barnes, he was on a show with Adam Krigler. Adam Krigler, great guy. I had him on 2 days ago. But he was not somebody who was, that knowledgeable about the situation in Ukraine. And, he said so, and, that's perfectly fine. But when he had on Robert Barnes was saying complete bullshit about the Holodomor. He was saying that the Holodomor was not about genociding Ukrainians, which 100% it was. and you have grandmothers that have lived through this stuff that tell this to their kids. Meanwhile, he was making the point that because some asshole spook wrote this book called The Russia House about how the CIA had all these Ukrainian nationalist books at the ready in these English libraries, how that's what inspired this fake Ukrainian nationalism. Meanwhile, like, think about it, Adam. If you were growing up as a Ukrainian, like a young Ukrainian man, and your grandmother told you stories about how the Soviet Stalinist officers would not allow you to leave your own village so that everybody starves to death. I don't think you need the CIA to become like a Ukrainian nationalist after that point, right? Like, I think
Right.
that kind of gets activated by a lot more of these things. But again, you have Barnes and you have people. And look, I even have the same sponsor as Robert Barnes does, Anton's Biltong, who I love, by the way. Much respect to Anton. But they're stuck in these particular circles where I don't even know if Barnes did the research himself or whether these are just like these talking points that he's
just doing
absorbed about
Kremlin
Ukraine.
talking points, probably. I'm not too up to date on all of his views, but I would guess he's probably real pro Putin, right? Anti-Ukraine and pro Putin, Barnes.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know whether he's super anti-Ukraine, but I assume that a lot of people in that position adopt being a realist on the world stage. Especially, I would say this relates to Bannon's initiative, which I think is a fool's errand, of taking Russia out of the orbit of China. Which, again, to me, that's even politically impossible in terms of how much territory China has in Siberia right now and how much of Russia they own. You're not going to be able to do that, even if they weren't like screwed up in the head, the Russians, when it comes to this slavish mentality. Because again, like, there is a difference between Ukrainians and Russians, because even though the Ukrainians did have a certain amount of them during a certain time that was also subjugated by the Mongolians, certainly not to the extent that the Russians were. The Russians became breeding factories for Mongolian slaves after the Golden Horde conquered them. And from there, you got people like the Saint Alexander Nevsky that they did that whole movie about. Have you ever seen that movie, Alexander Nevsky? It's a good movie. It's like an old Soviet movie. And they had, by the way, you'd like this part, they had these German warriors, the Teutonic Knights in that movie, whose swords were like crosses. So they were like carrying around the crosses, but then they did this, and then they became swords that they wielded around. And also, by the way, they were like stabbing like Russian infants and like setting them on fire, and like, you know, it's like all this propaganda stuff during World War II, and you can understand why. But anyway, when it came to Russia's trajectory, people like this canonized Saint Alexander Nevsky was the local warlord procurer of money for these Mongols, where he would go around village to village, collect this money from the village, and if the village didn't pay, he'd set it on fire. That's how he operated, yet this guy, this motherfucker, is considered to be a saint. And in fact, back then, in these Russian churches, they said a prayer for the Khan and his family's health. You know, so that's the level of brainwashing that was going on there. And I honestly think that this whole mentality that Russia has, where they want to like push people down, and that gives them like the sadistic kind of satisfaction. Like, even in the military, they would do all kinds of these hazing rituals, and the level of punishment is just like made to inflict as much darkness as possible on the person who, you know, is under you, because it's like this thing where people step on them, the Tsar steps on the Russians, and then the Russians step on the Russians that can't fight back against them or any other person. It's this slave mentality cruelty, which I would contrast with what the project of the West was. The West, I think, was a project where you got out of this slavish mentality and you actually found this balance between compassion and force. And you can't have one without the other, because if you don't have the force, then that compassion is going to lead to like this runaway tolerance of things that are going on, like in New York City right now with Mamdani, right? Like, you can't have that either, but you still have to have that kind of compassion. Like, I don't know about you, Adam, but when it comes to what you see as being the European soul, and I know you're an atheist, But if you were to define the Western man ideal, like the ethos of the West, and this is a question for Neil as well, what would you say it is? How would you say it's balanced out between that element of humanization and compassion, as well as utilizing the right kind of force in order to keep the enemies at bay?
You're asking me?
Never really thought of it like that before. You go ahead, Gnostic.
No, you can answer that.
I have no idea, Lev, to be honest. What would I say? I'd have to think about that. Like, how does the West like view itself or portray itself, or like?
Oh, how you would prefer the West to view itself, not really how it views itself right now.
Rational, not superstitious. Maybe
But it's been so superstitious.
I know.
Besides, like the Enlightenment, like.
Right.
I don't know about that. Maybe like what are the values of the West?
Return to our classical roots. Athens, Rome.
Yeah.
You know, Athens, Rome, Germany, Britain, you know.
Does Plato count as far as the classical roots then? Because okay, but if he counts, he got rid of, or he wanted to get rid of rather, a lot of these poets.
I'm not saying become Platonist. I'm just saying Plato's part of the tradition. He's part of it.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of good ideas, you know.
But how much do you want to? Yeah.
Nietzsche too. Nietzsche, you know, Schopenhauer, all the great genius German philosophers from, you know, English, French philosophers from the Revolution. We have some good, we have our roots, man. We need to stick to the good stuff instead of the stupid stuff. It sounds really simple.
You asked the question, Lev, but I'd have to think about it. I've never really thought of it like that. What do you see as the difference between the East and the West as far as like philosophy or values? Like what is the difference?
I definitely think we are more liberal than the East is, and not I don't mean that in like a leftist like shit lib way. I mean in like the French Revolution, American Revolution, Enlightenment way. Freedom of ideas, freedom to have your own podcast, freedom to have your own magazine, freedom to
yeah, there it is. Liberty.
That's the difference between the West and the East from the Russian China axis, Iran axis, and then the
you
American,
think China and
Britain.
Russia, you think communism, you don't think freedom.
You think of the
liberty.
red star, that red star, that symbol. And then you think of the West, you think of, you know, the British and American flags and French flags, the red, white, and blue. Now I know Russia today doesn't have the red star. They're not communist anymore. But you can, you know, they don't feel like a red, white, and blue type of country, you know?
Yeah. Well, they're very Eastern. I mean, even a lot of the stuff that Putin's been talking about as far as who's considered to be like a truer representation of Russia, he does look at the Golden Horde and the Mongols as being like positive examples to follow. Yep. So I think there is this Eastern element, which you asked me, Adam, like, how do you define like East versus West here? I think it does have a lot to do with collectivism, a lot to do with whether you're more in this kind of hive mind. But
individualism versus collectivism. Yeah, that's
but at the same time, you can't just be an individual too, right? Like you still have to take care of your family and your community. So maybe a better way to phrase it is the ability to look outside of yourself, to be able to see yourself in the third person, and to then be able to kind of like in this Promethean way, think several steps ahead as an individual while still keeping in mind the whole. Like that would be the ideal, right? Where you don't lose sight of whatever's out there, but you also try to see yourself as not just, you know, a cog in the machine and try to advance things beyond wherever they may be. You know, like I guess like progress, would progress be the right word here? But then progressing towards what? Like Giorgiani talks about progress as in having a novel invention, you know, all the time, like going beyond whatever we consider to be
building upon what's there.
Yeah, exactly.
Progressivism in the West is people think like trans kids.
Yeah, they think it's like social progressivism. That's right. You know, we're talking about like actual physical, economic and material, you know, that type of thing.
Right.
But that's a good example, though, as far as the trans kid stuff, because a lot of the people that become enmeshed in that, they become part of a collective. everything is the same. Like they have the same colored hair, they have the same piercings. So it does actually go back to almost like this animalistic type of society where you think that you're being transcended, but you're still following, a kind of herd. You're still stuck, as Andrew Tate likes to say, you're still stuck in the matrix, right? So I wouldn't say that that's progress. That may be just an inflation of egoism. I mean, that's the other question that I have for you guys as far as Christianity goes. How much of the social justice oriented things that we see today is a result of Christianity gone haywire, or was it like that in the very beginning? Because Neil, like you were talking before about Christians being kind of like the proto social justice warriors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They brought those ideas. I think that's one of the reasons why our society is the way it is. It's so Christianized. We have these ideas of like, like in the movies, you have the evil character is always like the rich billionaire and greedy, trying to take everyone's stuff, and the poor grandma's house is being foreclosed, and the rich greedy guy's trying to take it from her, and how are we going to save her? That's a Christian worldview. That's behind all that. That's like the bottom, the lowest is the hot. What is it? The first will be last, the last will be first.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what that is. Whereas the pre-Christian attitude was the Homeric hero ideal, where you go out and get it, like where whoever is the best that's what the word aristocrat means, rule of the best, the aristocratic worldview, where the best shall pervade. That makes sense.
But does that mean kicking some people when they're down? And
No.
Where is the level there? Okay.
Because you have virtue. You have these heroes were virtuous. They actually did fight for the innocent, and they fought against, they fought for justice. They were on the side of justice. So you have a balance, even though it's top down instead of bottom up. That's the difference. They're both going towards the same goal, which is justice and virtue. I'm not saying Christians don't have those goals, but they seem to have a more bottom-up approach, whereas the pre-Christian pagan worldview seems to have a top-down approach. The Nietzschean Ubermensch worldview. Nietzsche is very pagan if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, Nietzsche, how did he look at Judaism, though? Like, was he conflicted there, or?
Yeah, he's got a lot of conflicting thoughts on Judaism. I mean, he says good things about him. He says bad things about anti-Semitism. But then he'll go off and say like, these people were just a bunch of, what does he say? He says like, they're just like a bunch of nerds that were getting sick of being bullied. So like, instead of winning with war, they won with ideas, type of thing. Like that's what he says.
Yeah. But it's interesting because the Jews have been around for a very long time. Meanwhile, like all these different civilizations sprouted up. They were very beautiful. They did a lot of great things, but then they stopped existing. So the question is,
I always hear Jewish people say that. Like Rabbi Tavares says that the Greeks are still here. The Romans did. Look at Italy; it's still Roman.
But as far as the beauty of the Roman Empire goes, they're not in the same element as they were. Like the successor to the Roman.
Europe is the grandchild of the Roman Empire. I mean, we still have our Senate. I'm talking even in America too.
Sure.
We're like the descendants of the Roman world, like the European American access. And yeah, Greece is still like I think it's the same thing. It's just.
No, I see what you mean. So it's a transference of ideas that can show up, whether it's in Rome or later on, in the Eastern Rome or Greece or wherever, but it's not necessarily limited to a specific place. So it's more, would you say it's like a club? Like once you acquire certain ideas.
Think about like a genealogy, right? You have the Roman Empire and you have the Byzantine Empire, but then the Roman Empire collapses, but then you have a revival happening with the Carolingian dynasty. They call themselves the Romans. They call themselves like the Western Roman. They are a continuation in their minds of the Western Roman Empire. And that persists all the way until the 1700s when Napoleon conquers the Holy Roman Empire. He calls himself the emperor. So he even the whole liberal revolution was also a continuation of this Roman tradition. It's just now we have a more, I don't know, Republican, Democratic leaning instead of having the kings and whatever.
So
Kings
when
and
I
jarls.
say where are the Romans now, you say you're looking at them. You remember
Yeah, we're like
from
the
the
Roman. It's like the Roman
Sopranos?
Republic is back. That's all. Instead
Yeah.
of the Roman Empire, we're more like the Roman Republic now.
Yeah, no, I could kind of see that. Although, again, I really wish that Europe would get its shit together as far as the migrant invasion that's going on right now. Like, Adam, any thoughts on any predictions? And same thing with yourself, Neil, before we close this off. What is going to be happening to Europe and what's going to be happening to the right on Europe? Because unfortunately, a lot of, whether we're talking about the AfD or, like the parties in France, a lot of them are Russia aligned because it makes sense. You're not going to get any money from, the Liberal Party. So you're going to go to whoever gives you money. And that happens to be Russia. So the worst case scenario that I don't want to have happen is that if, let's say, Ukraine gets taken by Russia, Ukraine then goes into Poland, first it gets all of the remaining Ukrainian men into its own military, then it goes into Poland, goes into the Baltics, and these Europeans, they're going to be, let's say in the future, if they're going to have like the far right leadership, they're going to look the other way. They're not going to care what happens to Eastern Europe, even though for all this time, Eastern Europe, except for Hungary, was the one who was kind of like pulling its weight as far as resisting Russian imperialism and resisting the Muslim migration too. So no, they're going to say, we don't care about you guys, whatever happens, happens, look the other way. Like that would be the nightmare scenario that I don't want to have happen. Do you see that as being the case with the far right people you've spoken with in Europe?
I don't know of any far right people that I've spoken to in Europe, but I have seen that a lot of the far right groups are pro-Russia, Russia connected. But so yeah, I don't know what the plan is there. Ultimately, they're going to turn against the West and want to join Russia, or
no, I'd say they would just ignore what's going on.
Crisis, I hope it.
Yeah.
They shut off the spigot and get that under control real quick. And I think as like the worse it gets, the more cities that kind of get taken over and then go to the dumps. Hopefully, people will had enough of it because. If things go bad in America, it's like if Europe is gone too, there's nowhere to run to. And just not only that, but they have a better argument too because it's like that is their indigenous land. They do have roots going back thousands of years in those areas in Europe. So it's like to give it up. They didn't have the slavery of the slave trade like America did. So like all the arguments there, it shouldn't be happening. They should be able to put a stop to it even more so than here, but it seems like they haven't been able to. I don't know.
No, I mean, a lot of the Western Europeans, they've been nannied for a long time by the United States military-industrial complex, right? Like after World War II. So I think that they just kind of got soft. But to the point that I was talking about with the far-right people, like, yeah, it would be good if they, solve this issue with the migrants. But the concern here is that while they may solve that issue, they'll also turn a blind eye to Russia acquiring places in the Eastern Europe. So Poland, Baltics, so on and so forth.
You think they're going to take Ukraine? You said them taking Ukraine.
No, I don't. Yeah. I really hope that they don't. The only way that they would is if Trump keeps Russia on life support. Like that's kind of the only thing I'm seeing right now, where if they really want to dislodge Russia from China, they're going to start making more excuses for it and trying to help it along the way. Yeah. Like Trump was recently talking about how, Zelensky got to go to the table, and make this peace deal. Even though, by the way, Zelensky's been more of a softie in comparison to some of the other Ukrainian leaders that are out there in terms of how they want to approach Russia. Zelensky's been willing to have some kind of ceasefire at first and things like that. But, that's not enough for Trump. What Zelensky's already said, he wants Zelensky to make some kind of a deal. So I don't know if Trump, I don't know if Trump has some stuff from, like, I don't know if Putin has some stuff on Trump like that. Have you seen that email between the two Epstein brothers where they were talking about Donald Trump and Bubba by Bubba, I'm pretty sure that means Bill Clinton, how Putin has compromised with Donald Trump, I would say, for the sake of YouTube, blowing Bill Clinton's saxophone, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if I
So.
believe that one. I remember that one going around a little bit ago. But it's funny, all the big pro-Russia commentators, they were all like, "It's going to be over. They're going to take it all. The war is going to be over in 2 weeks. Ukraine's over with. They don't stand a chance." And it's been going on since, for years and years and years. Trump even said, "Putin's killing people. He's a lunatic. His military's weak." He called him a paper tiger. And then I know Kushner was just over there in Russia meeting with Putin as well. So maybe there is going to be some type of deal, but it's not going to be a taking of all of Ukraine. Trump might, strong arm Zelensky into giving up some of the territories they've already taken. I think is probably most likely. And then they'll say no joining NATO. So, but something's going to change pretty soon. I don't think it's going to keep dragging on as it is.
Well, look at Iran right now. If the United States attacks Iran, that's already going to severely limit the military capabilities of Russia when it comes to those Shahed drones. And not only that, but we've seen a lot of progress of Ukraine gaining territory because of the Starlink being shut off for Russia. So there are positive things here, I think, when it comes to Ukraine being able to completely drain Russia of any resources to keep fighting. But again, to me, it's a question of like how much America wants to keep Russia on life support during this time. So again, I don't know
if America doesn't do it, France and UK, they're all, didn't they just have some big thing, I think in Paris, or they had some big thing where they all promised support to Ukraine?
Oh yeah, that was the Munich conference.
Right.
Yeah, that was a very big one. And again, I see poor what's his name, Marco Rubio, trying to balance things out, talking with Hungary as well, and patting Hungary on the back. Even though I'm sure that guy realizes that Hungary is completely in the pocket of Russia right now when it comes to depending on them for oil. So Hungary's not a good player in this whole scenario, unfortunately. But Rubio does what he can, and any final thoughts, gentlemen, as far as the Epstein situation? Because I want to make sure that if there are certain things out there about Epstein that we did not cover, that we would be able to talk about them. Like we talked about the Rothschilds. We didn't talk about the mega group that much, but I did allude to the fact that there is this techno company that has to do with 9/11 emergency response, on the board of which is Peter Thiel, and I believe Les Wexner is also a part of it, as well as a lot of the people from this Israeli unit, which is considered to be like one of the top Israeli intel units of all time. And this is something that you could actually find in a magazine article from a reputable magazine on Israeli startups. So this isn't like a tinfoil hatter assertion over here. So if I can look into what exactly this is over here, it's pretty interesting. So Mega Group, nice name too, Mega Group.
Yeah, no, there's I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you could talk for
exactly
weeks and weeks about all the Epstein stuff. But I
just want to be fair, right? Like if people think that something is being hidden, I just want to make sure that they feel satisfied that we've covered as much as we can. That's all.
You're covering up the beef jerky, Lev. How dare you? The context of every one of those emails was clearly just about regular beef jerky too. These people are making the craziest reaches, like who puts jerky in a freezer? Just look it up. If you keep homemade jerky for long-term storage, it says put in the freezer. Even if you open a jerky at the store, it says refrigerate if you don't eat after 3 days. And but hey, I got to get going. I told my wife 2 hours. And she's texting me saying, "What's the deal?"
All right, no problem at all. So, guys, you have it there. We covered the Mega Group, sort of. We covered the Epstein connection to the Rothschilds, to Russia with the FSB guy, and also the former Prime Minister of Norway. So we've covered a lot of ground here. One last thing. I'm so sorry. One last thing that I must say over here. It's very important. There is a the award over here. Damn it, I have it over here. 1 second. Oh, here we go. Last thing I got to say. Association for Investment in Popular Action Committee, Syrian Solidarity Movement. So this is an organization which opposes military conflict and imperial interests in Syria. And they have this award, which, here we go, the Serena Shim Award for Uncompromised Integrity in Journalism. So this award is sponsored by these guys and also by Press TV, which, if you don't know Press TV, that's an outlet of the Iranian government. And here are the notable award holders, among which are Max Blumenthal, Scott Ritter. Okay, we got some interesting names. The Gray Zone, that's also associated with that. Antiwar.com, Julian Assange, George Galloway, Jimmy Dore, so on and so forth. So there we go. I just wanted to leave people with that nice little nugget of information as far as like who these fucking people are associated with here.
Yeah.
So Adam, please tell us here about your book before we go. The Jesus Deception.
It's
Yes.
like the #1 bestseller. It just came out like 2 weeks ago. #1 bestseller on Amazon in several categories: comparative religion, Christianity, Judaism. So yeah, the Jesus Deception. Pick it up. And if you ever want to do another stream where we get into what that is, what I mean by that, I'm down.
Absolutely. And also a very thorough stream about Israel and Palestine relations. We're definitely going to have
I'm
to.
up for that one. I'd have to go get a PhD in that.
Yeah.
That'd be a big history deep dive.
No, that'll be 5 hours.
Maybe take that up with a Palestinian that specializes in that.
We'll bring up all the experts. All right. And Neil, anything you would want to promote, my friend? What's up?
Just check out my channel, Gnostic Informant, and make some content out pretty soon.
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much for watching. You could follow me at LevPo on X and also patreon.com/breaktherules. Become a patron today. And if you are a $20 patron and you're around the New York City area, even though New York City is going to shit right now because of Mamdani, this is going to be, I don't know, maybe it's going to be the area of the resistance. Who the hell knows? Anyway, we're going to have great shows, and I would love to do a live one with both of you guys. If Adam, you're ever in New York City, like I said before, I would love to show you around some of these nice Jewish neighborhoods. They look right out of the 1950s. And by the way, not so much even the Hasidic ones. The Hasidic ones they're okay. They're mid. The best Jewish neighborhoods are like the Orthodox ones where like the women, I don't even think the women wear the wigs, but they wear nice like 1950s, early 20th century style dresses. And the men just like wear suits, like they don't wear the black stuff with the hats.
Why don't we just go to Manhattan and something normal place in New York?
Fine, I just wanted to show Adam that it's like
you want to show him the stickers of the messiahs all over the place. Okay.
I'm gonna go do. I'll do a book tour at the Chabad House in Crown Heights.
Good. We'll get drunk at the Chabad House and have a good time there. They know how to party. All right, guys, have a wonderful rest of your night. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the show. Smash the subscribe button. Smash the like button. Click the bell. Help out the show grow. I'll see you guys later. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, cool. I got to run too. My wife's